Merry Christmas, you filthy animals. For the 78 of you that watched the previous video that I took down that included this car, disregard all the information you remember from it, as this will be the continuation of the channel and what we're going to be doing with this car. These are the parts that we have, okay? I got enough stuff to put everything back together. So there are parts that I've custom made for this car and things that I'm doing to it as tests. So some of it I may discuss in the future on the channel. But let's see what happens, okay? When we do the first start, a lot of the custom things that I've done, we'll see, okay? So that's the question mark part going forward for this car. But everything else that we've discussed and all of the more findings videos, what we're going to reuse and not use, almost all of it still stands, okay? That's as far as I can go. I've thought a lot about how I'm going to discuss this one, and that's it. That's the best I'm going to say for it. So I will go over again what things I am going to reuse in terms of testing purposes for all of you. One thing that I have to do is I have to clean the aluminum piping for where that failed water pump hose was. I spent a decent amount of time carefully cleaning places that were oil stained on the block at the front. I only did it so well. Okay, I didn't want to disrupt the gasket material between the oil pan. But what's in frame here, that's the water pump. After I've taken it apart, I cleaned it with soft stuff, okay? Soft, don't like spray this thing with brake cleaner. I used something, I actually used this, okay? This brush right here on the back side, there's a lot of ribs on this thing, okay? So cleaning the sand and all kinds of crap that's on all these components, that one too there, the metal part of the water pump, it's very careful work, okay? Because there's an oil seal right there on this one, and then on the back there's these millions of seals, and there's that hex shaft that runs through there. And the other thing I want to say is on reinstall, that hex shaft, I've been so careful not to move that since I took it off, so that I can realign it with where the hex shaft is that drives the power steering and the water pump. So that's just something to be very careful on reinstall, and from the second you remove it if you're going to reuse it, and keep the old one for reference if you do get a new water pump. Yeah, I was just saying use soft materials to clean this, because if you guys were here, watch, I'm going to tap it with the socket. The information I've gotten, they call this fiberglass reinforced plastic, but it sounds like there's metal in this makeup too. I could be completely crazy, okay? But I've tapped this with a bunch of stuff, and regardless of what it is, fiberglass reinforced plastic, no metal, whatever, this is a fragile piece, yet it's still strong enough that it's a lot better than most would think, okay? But yeah, cleaning it up, I don't know if I could have used harsher materials. I didn't. It got nice and clean. I'm going to reseal everything perfectly, okay? And be careful with picks, because they will dig into this material possibly. I can't remember. It's not like I tried. In terms of the belt tensioner, okay, I don't know how I didn't catch this earlier, but I don't think there's any kind of hydraulic function inside of it, okay? That's just a rusted spring that's coated with stuff. And I've talked to other people. Again, I'm not going to mention any names because, I don't know, people are weird with connecting on the internet, okay? But people have helped me. I have helped people. That's all I'm going to say for that, okay? But so this is why I'm not going to mention anybody in terms of, how do I say it? Credit, okay? Because I don't even know if these people want to be associated with the things that I say. So I could care less. Now I'm just going to tell you guys the information to the extent that I know up to today. And this will always be updated as we go forward. So this is just a spring, all right? The chances of this failing are very low, and as you can see, mine is a winter-driven, torn boot, rusted spring. Everything was working fine. We should be completely near fine with this when we put it back. It's not like the Honda hydraulic tensioner, which is far more sensitive and they fail a lot more, say on 8th gen Civics. Yeah, I'll talk about Civics in an RS4 video. All this stuff's relevant. The thing you do need to check is all the bearings everywhere. So as you can see here, this bearing has no play. Okay, it spins perfectly fine, just like everything else on the car side. So we should, in theory, be perfectly fine reusing this tensioner. So I have purchased those $1 million O-rings for the secondary oil cooler to oil pan O-rings for the, God, the terminology in this car is starting to drive my brain out of my mind. The O-rings spill oil, and it comes where my thumb is. You see all over here. If you ever have oil on your tensioner on this triangular piece, because this doesn't sit like the way I'm holding it, okay? This goes like this. How does it go? It goes like this. Goes like this. I don't know. When it's in your car, you will recognize these pieces, okay? So I spent a lot of time cleaning all the oil off this with wire brushes carefully, some brass, some steel, and I got a lot of stuff off. Okay, this was caked in oil and dust and dirt and garbage, because you want to make sure those O-rings aren't leaking after this repair, and you also want to make sure that, yeah, just your stuff is clean. Okay, so this stuff cleaned up decently, but I spent a lot of time cleaning this up, that I'm holding it here like this. In terms of hardware, I've almost gotten new bolts for everything. Almost everything. Yeah, I was able to get the bolts. It took a while to wait for them all, but that's something I'm not taking a risk with, because again, this car's most likely going to have to be taken apart in the future, and I already have enough problems with broken plastic stabs, stuff you guys have been watching in all the previous more detailed parts of the series. So in terms of the bolts, the last thing I want is something snapping on me working on jack stands on an RS4. You guys still, some of you remember the intake manifold lesson? Yeah, there's gonna be an intake manifold video soon, but a lot of this stuff, O-rings, hoses, stuff, there's stuff in the boxes, everything, just watch the video, follow the car. It's still pretty linear, okay? But there is a reason I have to make some changes to the way I present on the channel. I am now going to do a little bit more cleaning underneath, and let's get to installing. Oh, one thing before we actually do something like that. Right there in the middle, from previous parts of the series, some of you guys should recall the issues that we've had with vacuum way back since I did the other series. This car hasn't been started in over a year, I've just kind of realized. So this is going back on the old one, the flap sensor. This is very important, okay, because we have this whole diagnostic series going on too, and it is going to bleed into this video and this video series. So follow every video, subscribe to the channel, follow the car, guys, okay? I'm not always just going to make part for this and that. If it's related to the car, it could be in this video. But just to let you guys know what you're in for, I mean, this is very important because it was the failed coolant hose at both ends which caused all this stuff to have to come apart. But cleaning it up, that old gasket sealant that Brilliant shop put before, which is still a common thing I see people saying they do all the time with cars. I don't even know if I can get you guys a shot. If you go to, here's how I'll put it. Go to the video, more findings, or one of those findings videos that I have, okay? There's an aluminum hose that I show you inside there, which has a ton of coolant residue and gasket material from a previous shop that installed it, and they put that in wrong and whatever. I've covered that a million times. But right now, the best I've been able to do is a rag with my hand oddly. Okay, this is the car in service position. You have a front clip off. This stuff is way, way easier. So in service position, I'm going like this with the rag. You can see it is working, okay, with the brake cleaner. This is all gasket maker material, whatever those idiots used, okay? When I put the brake clean on the aluminum hose and I rub with this, it's working. Now I might grab a brass wire brush for the reason that I can only get about 2/3 of it. The back 1/3, you could have the smallest hands in the world and you would not be able to reach back there. So I might have to get a really thin wire brush, brass like these, okay? Steel might scrape that aluminum stuff. I really don't know. So I'm just going to bend one of these to get the outside, the other side on the inside. I just wanted to cover all this stuff because it is really important in the case that this car leaks coolant when we fire it back up, because I don't want that new short hose to fail us again. So I'm going to go back at it cleaning. I just wanted to cover those things with you, what I'm doing there. And yeah, installing that hose, there's a reason that shop put it on sideways. That's going to be a real difficult one. Good luck if you're trying it like this. So maybe for some of you, this whole video series has been a, do I take the whole front clip off and do an AC recharge and do maybe a lot more work on the car, or do I do a service position? So take what you will from this series. Yeah, and that pile of parts on the desk over there and the stuff that I have, regardless of my custom stuff, just be aware, okay, that the prices on this, some of the parts on this car, on Audis in general, it's criminal stuff, okay? We're talking, I want to say all this stuff, but it's the internet. I want to keep it positive, and I also don't want to say ridiculous things. They're not ridiculous at all. Hopefully some of you understand what kind of frustration I'm trying to explain to you. And no, it doesn't matter that you have a lot of money. It has to do with the actual value of things. Okay? This is not the age-old, $100,000 car has $100,000 parts. If this breaks down far more than that, what I wanted to say. So, I know you're pissed off that I'm not saying any of this stuff, but just be ready for nice bills at the parts desk. Okay? There is that aluminum hose I was talking about this whole time. You can see I've cleaned a lot of it. I left the brass wire brush there to show you guys that what I was talking about was that backside over there. Now there's focused again. You can see that I've cleaned a lot of the gunk that you saw in the previous video, but I still do have a lot more left. I'm going to get this clean because this was our problem area. And yeah, that chafed looking wire, there's all kinds of stuff everywhere on all these cars. I mean, from previous shops, and just the whole design of the car is, everything is millimetric part away from each other. I'm not saying it's a bad design, but yeah, I don't even know what to say on the internet anymore. Cleaning that aluminum hose is such a pain inside the car, that backside, that I had to take one of the thinner ones that I had from the Pro Point package, and I have to do a full a bend of it and get it behind there, and it's still blind. You're still going to clean it up with this and then use your microfiber in the brake cleaner. Yeah, there's a tip if you're doing it this way. So because this is very important, okay, it's still really hard, but what you have to do is put your index finger at the top of this bent portion once you've bent the brass wire brush, and then you have to push like this while this is curved around so that it actually cleans the material up there. Now I don't have my mirror with me, but definitely have a flashlight and a mirror in order to check that backside of that aluminum hose in there, which you're cleaning like this, to make sure it's completely clean, okay? I'm gonna believe that I've done it fine, but could be a mistake not going to get my mirror. I hope you guys know how to use a mirror if you're working on one of these cars. I shouldn't need to explain an extendable swiveling mirror and putting a flashlight inside. So in terms of aluminum corrosion, if you encounter it, you should get new aluminum stuff, maybe, if you can't clean it well and it pits or whatever. But I haven't had that problem, and now after a good amount of cleaning, you can see at the center top of your screen that at least this side of the aluminum hose, yeah, I call it aluminum hose, I know it's the wrong word, but it's pretty much as clean as it's gonna get. There's no odd aluminum corrosion or anything on it. So if I do install it correctly, in theory we should be fine. But I will repeat, use a mirror if you can't. Now, while we're here, I'm going to mention something else. That I want to get this car fired up. So I'm not doing these things perfectly. And we're probably going to do front clip or engine out soon on this anyways. So you see here, I don't have my light with me, but there was a bunch of oil residue. I just used the back of a pick to scrape at it. Not a screwdriver, not anything else. So I did not dig into any of the material. I got rid of all the big chunks of oil and dirt that were here. It was like half a handful's worth along the front end of the engine. And I got rid of that because you really don't want to disturb the sealant between the oil pan, even though I suspect we do have possibly a bit of a leak from there. So we're pretty much good and cleaned up here on our focus point, which was in the center of your screen there, the aluminum hose. Let's get the water pump together and keep her going. So I've been rearranging a couple parts to start resealing, say, the water pump, rebuilding the tensioner assembly, all kinds of other stuff, okay? Videotaping under the car, putting everything back together. But this has taken almost a year, like I said, and in the previous parts of this series, I've gone into so much detail when removing stuff that you can use the same procedures to put stuff back. I did mention earlier in the video some things you should watch out for on reinstall, but I wanted to put this camera on a tripod and show you guys everything and underneath and film it myself. Honestly, right now, I just don't have the patience to do that, and I don't think you guys really care for that kind of content. I mean, if I had a camera person, I'd do it. But that's where we are, okay? I kind of apologize to those of you that like that kind of content. I am going to start putting everything together on my own, and then once the basic necessities are on the car for firing it up, we'll have a first start clip. Important thing as I'm getting started. So for the thermostat attaching to the water pump body side, these are those bolts that you guys have seen in previous parts. I've shown what kind of extensions and whatnot you need to remove them, but they were quite rusty, so I definitely wanted to replace this hardware. And even though I'm a crazy parts diagram person, and even though I don't like Audi's the way they make their diagrams, this is what I got, these 5. Now I put them side by side with the lips with the old one, and they are the exact same length, same thread pitch, but they are Torx bolts instead of e-Torx bolts. They should work fine, but I just thought I'd point this out that I double, triple, 5 million checked all these bolts, and this is what I got. So maybe it's an updated part number thing. Maybe it's the wrong bolt. We'll see what happens, but I am going to replace them because I don't want the chance of these e-Torx bolts stripping on me in the future when I have to possibly take things apart again. Part number and belt lengths match on our new OE part. Here's that doomed hose that we had. Now here's what's interesting on the new one, now that everything's clean. You see where the tech might have been confused, although from what I remember, go back in the other videos and see, our hose clamp was way off. You see that line there manufacturing wise? There's the thick T line, the white line, which you gotta align. And then there's this weird line that runs through the A. I'm going to use the thick line and the arrow, wherever that helps us go. Yeah, that's just indicating flow. But look at that. Don't get thrown off by the thin line. Go with the thick line. And yeah, go watch the other videos and see how bad the other one was, because I had not touched the clamp. Because some of the diagrams were unclear, I did get extra gaskets in some cases, just in case I'd use them somewhere. But this green one is oddly shaped, and it's pressed on both ends like one of the black gaskets. You can see on the edges of this old one here, it's straight. You can't really see it here, but this is far straighter on both sides as that round one. But this is the only thing in my whole kit that is the part number that should match. So I just wanted to point this out in case we have a leak from this point afterwards. Part numbers are part numbers, I guess, right? This is the only really weird part that I've run into. There's no arguing with anybody here, okay? It's all final sale stuff for an RS4 at the dealership. Yeah, the next clip really wasn't a cold start. There's still going to be a lot more probably. But this side of the water pump, I've seen in other videos that gaskets that fail are this center one on some UK RS4s that have similar rusty stuff like the Canadian ones and Northeast US. But this side of the water pump I had also cleaned up off camera before the shooting of this video, and I used a brass wire brush, some brake cleaner, making sure not to get any brake cleaner inside of where the hex drive shaft goes, because there is an oil seal in there, okay, and you don't want to disturb that with brake cleaner. But this thing was really dirty and it cleaned up decently for the tools that I have, okay? But this is the piece in the future that we're going to see if the standard Volkswagen Audi group piece joins right up to that more custom piece over there. You see, this is what's annoying about this camera stuff is I might have moved that hex shaft finally because I'm trying to use a camera with one hand. But whatever, that's filming problems for me I gotta deal with. This side, the mating surface, that's what I'm talking about with the brass brush. It takes a long time for a lot of stuff to clean it up. And you also don't want to go too deep. Rag, brake cleaner, I don't know what the impeller's made of, but I didn't spray anything on there. There's also seals going all the way through the impeller to the front. A bearing. Another important thing is the weep hole. You don't want to douse garbage and dirt into the weep hole. That's very important if you're cleaning and reusing this piece. But hopefully a lot of you are fully just replacing the whole water pump so you don't have to deal with what I am here. So the lighting wasn't too good. This is cleaner than it looks, but bottom right of your screen there, that is where one end of our failed coolant hose joins up to the water pump. This is where I spent a lot of time with the brass wire brush, brake cleaner, and a rag to really clean it up. And it's still not perfect. That's all just not pitting, not anything else. It's just the old metal, what it looks like at the very end where the hose joins up to it. So I just wanted to give you guys a visual so that in case it does leak, which it will not, it's fine. Like that stuff is smooth and good. You guys saw what it looks like. But that was the main point of really cleaning this. Everything else is just cosmetic on the outside here on the left. The back, of course, mates with that gasket there on the left. So clean up everything here. Water pumps back together. It's easy to get mixed up with these things while you're working. So on the right is actually that point with the arrow where that short failed hose attaches. What I was going off about earlier, this piece, this actually goes straight into the block and hits one of those, I think it's the green O-ring, okay? Don't quote me, but it needs to be really clean. Alright, that's the point. There was sealant residue and all kinds of stuff on it if you're reusing it. Just wanted to clarify that before I continue. So I quickly grabbed the old one. It is definitely one of the black O-rings that sits on the block side. The green ones are usually oil related on this. So the hex shaft O-ring that's on the block side, that's the green one. So the green O-ring I was talking about there on ECS's website, it says the S4s. This is the water pump drive seal O-ring. But like I said, I ordered 2 of these for no goddamn reason. And the one I took out of the car, I don't think it was expanded by any kind of sealant. I think the RS4 just has a different part number because when I plugged the one on the right there inside the car, it moves around inside the housing. It's not a snug fit like the other O-rings. What do? This was at an Audi dealer. I'm not even going to get... Man! God, the internet and parts suppliers from the dealer, everybody. You can't say a word. This is not 1980, 1970. This is the age of the internet. But look, one stupid O-ring has now thrown my entire process off. And you know what? I don't even care. I'm done with this BS. I'm going to put this O-ring in because I'm 100% sure the dealer will not take it back from me. And this is the part number that their system gave me. I'm not going to get into other issues that I had there with other parts. But I'm just going to put it in. We're going to install it. If it leaks, we'll take it out. We'll buy a different one. Even though I'm not filming everything, I'll try to keep the helpful bits in. So with the water pump, what I'm going to try... Okay, I'm going to bring the hose clamp in from the back, the bigger side, because it will fit and it works. And getting this hose on is a bit tricky because it's shorter and you don't want to put too much pressure on that bending portion. I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to shift it just a hair further towards myself, which is this way, so that that line and that line are perfectly aligned. And I'm going to feed the hose clamp in, and we'll see if it goes in like this. So, just for those of you trying, I am installing this outside the car because I think the mistake that shop made in not being able to get this stuff aligned, it's hard enough outside the car, is because they try to do this with the water pump already in there. But this might make the other side even more difficult. So we'll just keep working through this one and I'll tell you what I end up doing. Okay, so we're back. I can't for the life of me remember the name of the ridge that they put on coolant unions. Do you guys know what they're called? Beads? I think they're called beads. I can't remember right now. I came to feed the hose clamp in and the bead did not allow the hose clamp to go over. So I had it on my needle nose pliers and I let loose on it on that 45-degree neck there, and it didn't sit pretty on this hose. And I feel like that shop must have struggled a lot with this, or whoever worked on it, if they did it inside the car. I'm going to try again with the needle nose pliers, but it was not passing over the bead, okay? And it's a very tricky spot there, even with this water pump outside of the car. So I might actually just put it on there. I don't know, man. Welcome to Audi land. I'll stop talking here and keep trying shit. Okay, this is a recipe to bust up the lens, but I've gone full extension on the needle nose pliers, and we'll see if we can get it on. No way I could hold it, but I've maxed it out. Do wear safety glasses, as nerdy as it is, and do it like this. But I'll tell you guys if this clears the bead like this. Okay, so before I let go, got this crazy angle. Yes, I was able to carry it all the way through with the bead on the water pump and put it on. So this is the safest way not to damage the hose. Yeah, have a nice time. And when you get it on, there are those 2 white lines that'll show you if you've centered it on properly, okay? You guys remember what this looked like in the previous one. So, just for proof and for our testing of these constant velocity clamps, and if you should ever reuse them if you're in a pinch, we will see what happens, okay? Was it the clamp, which is a very low chance part of the twisting motion that occurred in that hose, or was it independent of it? If it lasts like this with these old clamps for a long time, well, it'll be interesting results. So subscribe if you haven't. And there is the other clamp, and that's going to go on the other end inside the car. I'm sure I'll have fun with that one. I will not be filming that. Thought I'd give you guys a quick update. So that is an H7 socket there. Even though I never touched the hex shaft on this water pump, it is not sitting on the shaft properly. That piece of wire you see there bent at a 90 degree, I put that inside where it goes to the hex shaft, but just the place where it bottoms out, okay, with my thumb, and I marked that, carried it out carefully, compared it to the water pump, and that's how I know how far down on this thicker piece of the water pump, that center circle, this one that's not focusing, how far out that's supposed to be. Okay, I mean, you can use the bolt holes because they're supposed to be flush with where they go. You'd think it's obvious, but when you're doing the actual work, you don't want to keep putting too much force on that, okay? Because you'll say, yeah, it's good enough. It's not good enough. I mean, technically, these should be your reference point here, this here, because it'll mate up, but you also need to be able to finesse the amount of push you give to the center so that you don't either push that hex shaft back, if that's possible, I don't know, or mess something else up. So where the H7 comes in is I've just turned it a hair, the actual shaft on the impeller side here, and then I try again. Now the part that, obviously that hose, you keep having to slide it in and out because it is part of this, and if you do get it at some point, I mean, here's what you could do. You could take the hose off altogether again and just use the, you see what I'm saying? I've already connected it, so I'm going to keep going like this. But you see the silver piece of the water pump, this impeller piece? Way before you do any of this, take the silver piece, come in here, and just start testing it. It'll give you way more hand space and reference room, trust me. If I keep struggling with it too much, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this piece off again, and I'm going to keep putting it in until it fits perfectly so that I know for sure when I put the silver piece onto the black piece of the water pump, everything is going to go on smooth. So, but then again, that also might not help. But I feel like I'm forcing it way too much right now, trying to put it onto the hex shaft. So, based on all the things I just said there, figure out what might work for you. I don't know what's going to work for me. I'm still going at it like this. So I will let you know what happens. And the reason I'm saying it's tough is because you can't look inside the hex shaft and match it up to this, because it's very round looking and it's deep in there. I mean, even if you shine a light right in there, you'd have to have some godly skills to be able to see the ends of the hex. You'll know what I'm talking about when you're doing the job, but this is a tricky bit of the project. And that hose clamp on the far left there, on the hose, remember the orientation with the needle nose that we took it out in. You're going to have to be able to try to do the same thing. So, tricky job in service position. Time to use your brain. So number 7 deep socket would have been better, but what you see down there is, well, I'm gonna add some extensions to it if I need. Yeah, I'm gonna add like an extension and a reducer to that 7mm socket there. But what I'm gonna do, because I told you it looks very round and the hex shaft is buried deep in there, I'm actually going to put the number 7 socket inside there and then carefully pull it straight out and match that on my water pump. Because just going back and forth with different attempts, it's not working. It's not working. So this should be a smart idea, but we'll see what happens. I'll let you know. So just using the H7 was too shallow. I have put it on about a 3-inch extension and a reducer, 3/8 to 1/4. And let's see if we can figure it out with this. So let's go under. There you have it right there. Okay, so that sat right on there nice. I'm going to carry it out gently. I mean, I could probably mark it to be sure, but I'm just going to carry it over. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mark the very top of the socket, and then that's going to, the very top of the 3-inch extension there. At the very end of the left, at the top, I'm going to make a marker mark, bring it out, and that's going to be the top when I switch over to an H7 hex on the water pump side. Okay, you don't have to necessarily mark the top, but working between these, it'll be a great help if you have a second person to hold the water pump upright for you, because I measured it bottom side the first time. But you can also put the H7 inside of the 7mm socket and draw a line all the way down everything, disconnect them, and then put the H7 in to adjust the water pump side shaft if it's gone out of whack or something. I only have a pencil. You obviously can't find a marker whenever you need. So, oh man, it's just messed up.